So whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. You ready?
Well, you've got to say it.
Kick it.
Welcome to the Hardheaded podcast. Thank you for joining us today. A special day because we have a special guest. The legend Steve Peeples is with us today.
Welcome.
Legend of what?
A legend.
So many things.
You may have heard Steve brought up a couple times, and I know one of them was in Matt's top 3, I can't believe this is actually happening moments. Matt and Steve got to know each other through prosthetics. Steve is the owner of Peeples Orthotics and Prosthetics. That's actually where Matt and I work. We have opportunity to work with Steve. Troy's had opportunity to work with Steve as well.
Yep.
In his video capacity, doing patient testimonials, which you could find at peoplesop.com if you want to see any of Troy's work, talking with some of the patients.
YouTube.
Yes. All over YouTube.
So, what's on our mind? We just want to get to know Steve a little bit more, and we've got a lot in common with Steve, not just from the professional side, but Steve is an avid outdoorsman. Does a lot in the volunteer community with Wounded Warrior Outdoors, and does quite a bit helping veterans recover from injury, and which is exactly how Matt and Steve got to know each other.
Yep. Pretty interesting meeting story too. When I retired and came back to Wichita, I'd been to a few places by then, and I was at a different prosthetics clinic, and was having no success, walking with 2 canes everywhere I went, uncomfortable sockets. And I'd gone to a local hunting convention here, Midwest Hunt Fest, and got a coupon to go to this archery shop. And I was like, well, I'm in town. I might as well stop by and pick up some more broadheads because I'm not the best archery hunter in the world. So I'm always needing to replace my broadheads. And from missing and hitting the dirt and doling them out and breaking shafts and everything. So
falls right in line with your rifle.
Unlike
there'd be a trophy.
Yeah.
Unlike my shotgun shooting, my my archery is poor.
Right.
But so
you do even worse than tying for third in archery.
I don't tie for third in anything.
Yeah.
All I need is 2 arrows. That's all I'm saying.
I've heard about that.
No, you don't 3-shot. I don't even know if we covered that. But so I went to this archery shop and I'm standing in line waiting to check out, and a guy behind me, we get to talking and asked me if I was a veteran. I was like, yeah, I'm a veteran, and asked if looked at the prosthetics. He goes, is that how that happened? I was like, yeah, got to talking about him a little bit, and he knew the terminology, which is pretty rare because coming where I came from the hospital, everybody knew the terminology, but retire and come back, nobody knows what an X3 is. Nobody knows what foot you're wearing, and so I went and I paid for my stuff, and but while I was at the Hunt Fest, walking around, some guy just kind of tapped me on the shoulder while I was there and was like, hey, where do you, what's going on? Where do you go get your prosthetic work done? And I told him where I went, and he was like, well, you need to go, you need to check out Peeples Prosthetics. You need to go see this guy named Steve. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. I've heard about him, but he's not on the VA contract. So it just wasn't one of my first options because that just wasn't an option for me at the time. And he pulls out the card and he goes, hey, let's call him right now. And I was like, dude, it's Saturday morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. I go, he doesn't want to talk about work.
Right.
And he goes, oh, no, man, it's what he loves to do. It's what he loves to do. And it's like, he's really forcing me to try to call him like right now. And I'm like, it's not happening.
Yeah.
Kid's name's Jacob.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jacob, it's not happening, man.
Well, you don't like phone calls anyway. So
yeah. Text
calling
message.
a stranger. Yeah.
But, I was like, I tell you what, I'll take the number and I promise you I'll give him a call on Monday. So anyway, fast forward, I'm back at the archery shop talking to this guy, and, we talked about the prosthetics and being a veteran and all that. And I pay for my stuff and I'm getting ready to walk out. And he goes, hey man, he goes, just want to tell you again, thanks for your service. And if you ever need any help with that, he goes, I'm Steve Peeples and I own Peeples Prosthetics here in town. And I was like, what? So
that's kind of funny. I was supposed to just call you. Yeah.
I was like, I pulled the card out of my pocket.
Out of his pocket.
I was like, this Steve Peeples? He goes, yeah. He goes, how'd you get that? And so then I went through the whole story again. But that's how we met, and it's kind of just been a God thing ever since. And but yeah, so you were talking about my top 3. I can't believe this is happening moments. One of those is when, for the first set of sockets that he made me, I stood up on them and took off without canes for the first time in my prosthetic life. And so it was like, I can't believe this is actually happening. It wasn't my fault this whole time. It was the stuff that I was given. Mm-hmm. And so, he's extremely good at what he does, and we're happy to have him here today. Yeah.
And knowing you, Steve, and we'll get a little bit into the business side of things. I don't know this. I'm genuinely asking, but I'm assuming that the sockets that you were great and you had never felt so comfortable before, you probably weren't satisfied with them and probably scrapped them and made some new ones for him that were even better.
Yeah. I mean, you only know what you know.
Yeah.
He stood up on those things, was doing a lot better, but there was just a lot of little things. We ended up making them six sets before I was kind of getting happy. But
yeah. And one of the things that's really, really neat from a value that we get from guests that we could bring on, from a business perspective, Steve's methodology, and I've heard you say it a bunch of times, if it's not good enough for my grandma, if it's not good enough for my mom,
yep,
it's not good enough for a customer. And I think that's a fantastic way of looking at things, and their balance sheets and the P&L and all of that. But ultimately, the people that are in your care, you go above and beyond to make sure that things are the best they can possibly be at that time. And you may later even find out a way to make it even better.
Yeah, I mean, you're always trying to improve on things and make things better. And Matt's legs, they were the best that he had ever had at that moment, but they were still junk.
Something
You
can
only
do
know
more.
what you know. Yeah. And it's kind of one of those things on the business side, it doesn't make sense. Not anybody that I know of does it like that as far as in our industry. But by the time we get through it, the next time is when we'll make up from going through all that plastic that insurance didn't pay for. It all comes back around.
Well, and that's why you have patients that are bumping into somebody at a hunting show and saying, give this guy a call him today. It's Saturday, but he'd love to talk to you. You can have something better. So that's better than advertising. That's literally your patients are the one that spread the word, because you have that philosophy on how you should treat people when they come in, and what expectations you have for what you and your team put out.
Yeah, if we can under promise and over deliver, I mean, that's all we can hope for.
Best in the industry. I mean, that's the people that I've had an opportunity to meet from all over the country while I've been here.
I'm at least the best at this corner of the desk.
Yeah. I'm still, heck, I've been making some insert molds, and I stink at that, and I've been doing it for a long time. So like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the rest is history. Then after that, you've got, that's when you already hooked up with WWO, and Steve, I don't think you were working with him yet.
No, yeah. I didn't really know anything about him until Matt came in and started telling me what he loved to do, and it was just intriguing and awe-inspiring. And you get these veterans, and you just want to see them live, the best life that they can, and get to do those things, and it's always fun. And Matt and I hit it off. I mean, he loves to hunt, I love to hunt. And so it was a couple of years. He asked me to go on one of those trips.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's life-changing. You get to see what that stuff does, where you're getting, instead of an hour of therapy, those guys on those trips, they're getting 16 hours of non-ADA compliant work, and it's just it's been such a blessing and such an honor just to watch it happen and be a small part of it. It's cool.
Good. And your sense of humor fits really well with the military guys too. So
yeah, I've got a little bit of a potty mouth.
It fits. It fits right in. So, but and I guess for the listeners, if you wouldn't mind going through, because you were going to Texas Tech.
Yeah,
we all know that. You talk about it all the time. You've got the Red Raiders stuff.
Lord's team. Patrick Mahomes.
And we'll let you have that because we've got Mahomes. But so I guess tell us a little bit about how you got into prosthetics and why, how that took its course.
Well, this will be short story. I was running track at Tech. 1 minute you're thinking about doing big things, and I did decathlon, had big plans, tore up my hamstring. So I didn't really have anything. I wasn't wanting to, we were in the Southwest Conference back then, and I didn't want to get anybody to beat me in the Southwest Conference, where I'd probably come in third after that. So just like, I'm just going to be done with this stuff. So I went, and my dad called me up to his office, and he's like, went up, grew up in a little town about 30 minutes from Lubbock, drove up there and went to his office and saw him. He's like, Steve, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I'm going to, maybe look for a job, maybe, don't really have any
this
plans.
grand plan.
I'm planning on just having fun for a while. And he said, well, I think you need to get some business experience. So I was like, okay, I'll maybe start looking for a job. He said, well, here, I've got a number. You need to call these guys. Go in Monday, and they'll probably hire you if you, don't screw it up. So I went in, and it was a couple that worked for my dad. Their son worked at Lubbock Orthotic and Prosthetic Center. So got me a job sweeping floors, taking out the trash, working on braces, pouring plaster, doing that stuff. And just kind of, it was a God thing. My dad retired when he was young from Motorola as an electrical engineer, and then moved back to West Texas from Scottsdale, mostly to teach my little sister and I what a dollar was. So put us to work on the farm, bought some farms, had this wholesale ceramics business, which was completely off the grid to start, from what he had been doing, and ran this little business. And so I grew up around plasters and all the stuff that we use. And that kind of, I was working at that shop and went in one day, and I'd been there about 6 months, and I'd already kind of found a niche as far as the molds and stuff, where I was pretty good at making braces and making molds and getting sockets to fit. And one of the prosthetists at that place asked me to go in and help. He was going to fit this little 2-year-old with a leg, or no, 10-month-old. She was 10 months old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And they didn't speak English, and went in there, and the dad was kind of sitting on one side of the room, kind of that machismo thing, and the mom and the grandparents were there. And he went in, he had taken a mold, had this leg, and it was kind of like one of those things where everything lined up pretty good, kind of like with Matt's legs. We got pretty lucky on getting those in. He drops the canes right off the bat. Well, this little girl's 10 months old and stands up, and it's like, mom is starting to cry. She's kind of wobbly, and starts running around the room. And I mean, I was just like going, oh my gosh, this is how crazy is that?
Wow.
The grandparents are crying, the dad's crying, everybody's crying. I'm back there crying, trying not to, it's just kind of one of those things where I went through that, and then I worked in the ER. And, the one thing I noticed about the prosthetics was when my boss, the guy that owned the place, wasn't there, he was still making money. We were still fitting braces and doing stuff. Yeah. And my buddies, I was working with the trauma team at Texas Tech and working in the ER. When those surgeons weren't cutting on anybody, they weren't making money, even though it was a lot, more stress. But my boss was fishing all the time and hunting, and it was just one of those God things. Right. Just fell into it.
Yeah, you could change people's lives and still have a life.
Yeah. And just, for our industry, it's been pretty lucky, just the way my dad raised this kind of problem solving, looking at the world through an engineer's glasses, how you're raised. And then, looking at some of the stuff that we do it just doesn't make sense, the ways that you're taught to do stuff. And some of the, the book stuff is just not the way to go about solving for that person.
Yeah. And I think that's evident based on Matt's, experience and a lot of other patients that we have. There's a lot of capable people out there that are providing prosthetics that help them in a way, but then you kind of look at it a little bit differently, understand a little bit more of the dynamic on loads and where the bones and the nerves and all that are in the residual limb, and then you work your magic.
try to imagine how that stuff's moving inside this little rigid socket.
Yeah.
And we've been pretty fortunate to get pretty lucky.
Yeah.
And we got a great team. I mean, it's not like it's all me, we got just an unbelievable team.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, once you hired Matt, it just got so much better in here. Just ask him, he'll tell you.
Yeah,
he'll tell you. I'm surprised this isn't an Employee of the Month trophy that he made himself.
Well,
I have multiple name tapes for that.
That's funny.
But, and so, you started out saying you don't know what you don't know. And so if you had somebody that was a new amputee, what are some of the top things that you would knowledge that you would impart on them? What do they need to look for? What is important when you're starting out?
Yeah, I think, starting off, the first thing is to have somebody give you some realistic goals. Every amputation is different. So looking at one person's leg that has a nice clean amputation and doing well versus somebody like in your situation where you've been blown up and, it's a completely different set of problems that they're going to have. So laying out the path to those things, and you'll see some of those things, like even your frustrations where all these guys around me are doing so well, they give you the same thing that they've given those guys. Well, their injuries may not be the same, where on your pelvis where you've got, HO, which is bone growth that kind of grows like cauliflower. And some of those little things, just getting you comfortable and getting the volumes and everything right makes a big difference. But, being patient, slowing down is the biggest thing. I think everybody, with the internet and everybody seeing all these videos, you'll see somebody get a leg, get an arm, take off and start using it right off the bat. It's not reality for everybody, and to keep that stuff in mind. And then hip, same thing, hip strengthening, hip range of motion. That's the biggest thing. I think probably where I'd start.
Yeah. Well, there's just so many people, like I see a bunch of online, cause I track the amputee groups all over the internet, and, I try to impart knowledge, where I can. And, you see a lot of people that are asking these questions on a forum, and I'm like, why are you not asking your prosthetist these questions?
Yeah.
Or they're afraid to, because that patient prosthetist relationship is crucial, and you've got to have a good open line of communication and don't be afraid to ask those questions and, to figure out what you need to do. And, that's, we of course we hit it off, and we like a lot of the same things. And so we're very comfortable with each other, and so being able to talk about that. And so that was for me, that open line of communication and being able to talk through things and tell them, no, these are perfect. I don't want you messing with these. And he goes, no, they're not good enough. We're going to do it again.
Right.
And, and each evolution has gotten better.
Yeah. And I think on that, the prosthetist communication, half of my job most of the time is figuring out, it's the same as coaching. How many of those coaches do you see where, man, they can motivate everybody on a team? You look at some of those great coaches,
right.
And that's the difference between them and the guys that, are great coaches for, Deion Sanders or,
right.
These couple of players. And, the hardest part of my job is each individual, not the hardest, but trying to figure out, communicating what I want them to do so that it works for them, and not just giving up on it, not, go find therapist or something. I'm kind of a little bit of a pain that I'll have them come back, and just take the time until we get them walking straight. I want them.
So you change your methodologies of motivation, if you will, and the goal setting based on the patient.
Even Matt's working for us, it's kind of funny. We had a guy that had been coming in named Delmer, and he was an above-knee older gentleman. He was nearly 90, but he was one of those guys. He'd been a dairy farmer and had that grip and that little sparkle in his eye where, I'm like, this guy's wanting to get it. And I literally had him come in every week for 4 months. Just come on, we're going to work on this stuff. I'm like, I want you to, keep your heel in, swing it through, and then ease it into the ground. And Matt, this is before he started working for us. He came in and he started coming by. Matt, we got his legs. He was so pumped up about getting stuff. He'd come by anytime we had new patients and working with people. And he's sitting there and he's like, no, Delmer, just do this. He stands up, shows him, same thing I've been showing him for all these months. And the guy does it. And I'm like, I'm kind of like, my ego's kind of a little crushed. I'm a little ticked off. I'm like, that's a bunch of BS. And so I went home that night and I was sitting there thinking about the day, and I always go home and think about what I could have done better, what I'm going to do better the next day. Of course, then I sleep and do the same things over again, But so I went home and I was like, man, that kind of ticks me off. And then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, who cares?
Right.
Matt did it. He was empathetic to Matt, or was willing to get that information.
Saw him doing it.
Could see him doing that stuff. And I was like, we won. Today was a victory, and it was a big victory. And I'd been, trying all these different things, and it was just like, I just getting the right person in there. So Matt started coming in. We eventually ended up hiring Matt and having him, help those patients, especially early on. It's been such a blessing and so good to have somebody in that role. You know, it's one of those things that you don't ever really think about. And I always thought this is a bad idea and stuff. It's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Right.
Having Matt there just to, even if I'm fitting something, I go back. They're working through problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And it is funny.
Does this count as your annual performance review?
No,
I just heard him say it's one of the
I'm
best.
going to count it.
Yeah.
I get another trophy.
Yeah, we're gonna
put a hash
what
mark
you
on
need.
that.
Need a
Another
taller
trophy.
ceiling if
But
he's going to make himself another trophy.
Well, and it is kind of funny because these people come in, and they're talking to me, and they're always trying to compare themselves to me. Like, oh, I want to be as good as you are. I want to walk as good as you do. And it's like I look at them, and they don't believe me in that moment. Because they might be older, or they might they just don't have that confidence yet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I guarantee you, in a few months, you're going to surpass what I can do. I guarantee it. Because a lot of these folks are, single below knee amputee or a lot younger, like Zach, with the traumatic injuries that he's been through. And for our audience, Zach was a farmer that was electrocuted. His grain cart hit a
Somebody else's,
power
and he
line,
actually
yeah.
went to save him. So
and so basically burned his legs off and had a bunch of issues all over, and this kid, if he were to put some pants on, you would never in your life know that he was a bilateral amputee. The kid is just
and
he works his tail off,
and
too.
he does.
that gets to the
really
goal
hard.
setting. I remember
Yeah.
you asked him like, what do you want? What do you want to be able to do? And he's like, well, I want to be able to walk. And you're like, no. We're going to do that. Like, what do you want to be doing? And he's like, well, I want to be farming again. And that's, Troy, the most recent time we had you out for a video perspective, you actually went out to the farm and filmed Zach working.
I bet we can flash a little bit of that video.
Yeah, we'll show some video, and we'll share the link to his story in the comments for everybody.
Because this kid is driving that video that you took where he's driving that combine, and they told him basically that you're not going to farm again. And I remember that portion of the video with him talking about that and driving and all this kind of stuff. And here he is climbing up into this huge combine and then working a manual, working a clutch and everything else just with his prosthetic legs.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, he's worked his tail off to get there too.
Yeah.
And when people say I want to be like Matt, I always wonder, in the back of my mind, now that I know Matt so much better, is why would you set the bar so low?
Right.
I tell him the same thing. I tell them the exact same thing. It's so funny because it's fun for me to be able to watch that confidence level because I know Steve does this every day. He gets to see it every day, and now I'm part of that exclusive club too, where somebody comes in with their expectations. They're like, man, I just want to walk, and they don't have that confidence yet, but what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And when they finally see that and they're like, oh crap, I can, and then they finally get it. And I'm like, see, I told you, you're out running marathons now, and I'm never going to run a marathon.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's fun.
You'll probably make yourself a marathon trophy though.
First place Boston Marathon.
He drove 26.2 miles home. Let's get a trophy.
Get a trophy for that. So to our audience, what we're talking about is all of us, we're actually out, Troy included, we're out shooting sporting clays. It was my first time to shoot sporting clays. I think it was Troy's first time to shoot sporting clays.
No.
Oh, it wasn't.
Wasn't the
So
first time.
Matt and Steve had been doing this for quite a bit. And I think you were going to make some adjustments to his program.
we were programming his knee because you guys were doing a TV show. So y'all had that. I was kind of on the sides, but working on his leg.
So we're keeping score. And we get down to the end of the match.
But before you get to there, because we're talking about the programming of the legs, so just for everybody out there, here's how it started. I sandbagged the first 4 stands, and then we were going to program the knee, and then all of a sudden I was going to start hitting every clay. And
so you may have sandbagged.
I did sandbag.
I did know that the knee got programmed. I
The
saw
knee
that
did
happen.
get programmed.
We did.
You did not hit all the clays after that.
Not all of them.
That did not happen.
Not all of them.
That did not happen one bit.
Sandbagging nonsense. This is the first I've ever heard of.
Troy, don't
sandbag
don't play that game.
4 holes.
Don't play that game.
At the end of the day, we're getting, it's the last round. Now I'll tell you right now, Steve is at the top. Like we were not in the same category as Steve. I think you may have missed 4 or 5. 4, I think 4.
Just a few.
The whole round. We get to the last station, and I'm like, Matt, I'm if you hit all 4, you'll beat me. I believe this is how it went.
Yeah.
And because I only hit 1 out of the last, I don't know what it was, or however many I hit, but you had to hit 4, and you did not. You did not hit all 4.
I think I hit 2.
And so it was Steve, and then it was me, and then you tied Troy. You and Troy hit the same number of clays.
That's correct.
So those are the facts. So sandbagging and all, but what happened after I start working here, Matt and I share the same office, and Matt shows up one day with this trophy that's 5 foot tall, and it says, like, I don't know what it says, Matt Amos Lifetime Award for Sporting Clays or something.
Yeah, Peeples Orthotics and Prosthetics Office Champion Lifetime Award.
Yeah. So he went and bought this trophy himself and brings it in. And it's like, just so everybody knows, I'm the best sporting clay shooter here. Yeah. So I'm like, you haven't beat anybody in the office.
So here's
chair right now.
Yeah. So here's the deal. I mean, because what you did was, I was like, all right, you kept claiming that you'd won.
I did.
And you said that there was no asterisk by your win when I didn't shoot the first 4 stands. So I was like, all right, let's go shoot again. You're like, nope, I've won, so I'm not going to shoot again. So then I had to get this trophy in order to instigate you to get another round of sporting clays in.
The funny thing is, you're coming at me, and Steve beat us both handily.
Well, and the only reason for that is because they couldn't fit back office. Peeples Orthotics and Prosthetics back office champion on the top plaque.
Once I moved out of here, I got you.
So I was trying to do the back office champion, but they couldn't fit it on there. So he's like, how's just the Peeples Orthotics and Prosthetics office champion? I was like, that'll work.
That'll work. Well,
just put back door champion.
Whenever your kids come in, I'll say, hey, whose trophy is that? And they'll say, Daddy's. And I'll say, that's right. That's Steve's trophy.
They're slowly coming around. Rowan today was like, that's Matt's trophy.
Yeah. Well,
now that I think about it, though, I think that day I was sandbagging the first 6.
Yeah, you were sandbagging
stations.
too. Yeah,
you weren't sandbagging nothing.
I felt bad about beating a double amputee. You know, I held back, but I couldn't hold back far enough. You know,
yeah, no.
Well, you just
round 2 coming up.
That's why we need those cameras if we're ever going to play airsoft.
I got footage of that day.
Yeah, we had cameras there.
I don't want edited footage. I want full on, no edits.
Now we're getting to see the real Matt Amos today. Thanks for bringing the real Matt out.
No problem. Yeah. No problem.
All right.
So, top 3.
What do we have for top 3 today?
Top 3 wild game meats. And we picked this one, kind of go along with Steve, because Steve has done quite a bit from an outdoors perspective. So we thought this one would be pretty interesting. You've had the opportunity to get out there and hunt some pretty neat things. I'm just a country boy, and I'll fire away. I'll start off. We may have some overlap, so I want to get mine in first.
Here we go.
So my top my top 1, moose. In fact, from that one right there, I believe. Yep. Right, Matt. We had some. I think we were doing a Labor Day camping trip, and Matt brought some moose steaks, and some people canceled, didn't show up for the camping trip. So the meat that
everybody looking at me for, huh?
Yeah, the meat that he had thawed was more than we could consume. So one night in a meal, so one night we grilled them. It was fantastic, and then we had 5 or 6 other steaks that are just sitting out there thawed out, and I was like, Matt, I think I got an idea what we could do with these. He's like, well, I said steak and eggs. We'll have steak for breakfast. So did a quick brown on the outside of them, let them cool down, and then just put them back in the cooler. The next morning, we're cooking the steak cut bacon, and so we had a nice little bacon grease on the griddle. And steak cut bacon is awesome, by the way. There's like 7 slices in a pound. It is thick,
really?
thick.
I haven't had that.
It's awesome. Well, anyway, we put those steaks down in that bacon grease and finished cooking them, and I'm telling you, that was fantastic. So
it was really good,
very good. So moose would be my number 1. Number 2, crappie. Grew up eating it. My whole family. My dad, big crappie fisherman, and it was kind of February when we'd really start getting into it and fill up the freezer, and those fish fries were always good. And then a little bit of a delicacy for a Louisiana boy, fried frog legs would be my number 3. White meat, and you get the batter just right.
Do you like walleye? Tender. I mean, that freshwater crappie.
I've had walleye once. I have walleye in Louisiana, but I did have the opportunity to go fishing up in Minnesota and had it. It was good, but I hadn't eaten it enough to say, "Oh, this is way better." Yeah. Because it was prepared for me there too, so it wasn't like a home cooked recipe and all that. But anyway, one of my good buddies, Griff. He's big time fisherman. He says you can't beat walleye. He said walleye's the best. So.
Yeah. walleye my favorite kind of non-trout,
Yeah.
North American freshwater, then crappie,
Yeah.
channel cat.
Well, fire away. What's your?
So me, I'm going to tie you up on number one was moose.
Yeah.
Moose is my favorite game meat. My second thing I kind of threw two in there was quail and trout. I like quail. We have fried quail for Christmas breakfast. We have a huge breakfast.
Oh, wow.
Fried quail is one of the things we have.
Mm-hmm.
So in my number three is mountain lion.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So mountain lion is one of those funny things, and I think half of it. Number one, it's really good, but it's a white meat.
I've never seen one, never processed one or had.
Yeah. So it's kind of like I call it a cross between pork and chicken, but it's just like a pork tenderloin. It's just surprising. But I took the quarters, had them, smoked them. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was kind of one of those things that was a surprise. And actually, there's a friend of mine that's a surgeon. He's an Asian, and I went to him after I shot this thing, and I was like, I need your family recipe. He's like, for what? He's like, for a cat. And he's like, what? We don't, kind of went back and forth quite a bit. It's probably going to get thrown off the air, but went back and forth. I was like, no, you really got to give it to me. And he's a good buddy. He's like, we don't eat cat. I'm like, come on, give that to me.
Yeah.
But it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was really completely blew me away. And we had a guy actually, when we drove all night, got out to Colorado, they'd gotten a big snow. And so I went up, took my test for being able to get my tag, got my tag, went up, and you got to get them checked in with the game warden. So we went down to meet the game warden after this was the most brutal day of hunting. We planned on, you may walk a mile and do something. We got this deep snow that's over my knees. We cut a track about 9 a.m. We didn't get back into the truck until 10 that night.
Oh, wow.
And so I had one bottle of water, my fat little flatland self, up at altitude. We started off at, we were right on the Colorado, New Mexico line. Started off about 8,500 feet, ended up going over 10.5 at one point. It was just every ridge we'd go. It was just absolutely brutal. And while we got there and the game warden was coming to check, this guy came up and offered me $500 for a couple of quarters. And I was like, man, this is a setup. They're going to try to arrest me for doing something stupid or, I didn't know what to think. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I paid more than that to hunt this cat. And got home and I was like, oh my gosh, I can see why they
want it.
Yeah. Filet mignon of the mountain is what the old mountain men call it.
Oh, wow.
So kind of
cool.
funny. So that's my three.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right,
I'll
Troy.
go next. Number 3 for me is pheasant. I like to breast them out, and I cook them 2 ways. I'll cook them up and make fajita meat out of them and have pheasant fajitas. Or I'll put the breasts in a slow cooker, cook them for about 6 hours in cream of mushroom sauce. It's really good. It tenders them up pretty good. And then number 2 is duck breasts. I like to make a mean duck gumbo. It's my Aunt Rosalind's old recipe, so it's a family recipe she has passed down. She makes duck. She also used to make a seafood gumbo, and I got both recipes that are really good. So duck is number 2 for me, and then number 1 is venison backstrap.
That's
me,
good.
It's the absolute best. I like to slice it thin, batter it, and fry
It's the
it.
only way you can slice your.
The ones that he shoots.
Yeah, they already start out thin. I don't know why you're slicing them.
Young, tender, backstrap.
Tender
The yearling.
backstrap, button buck backstrap. It's pretty good. No.
So my that's one thing. So wild game at my house is hit and miss. But that everybody in my house goes crazy when I fry up some backstrap.
It's
kids,
so good.
everybody. It's just they love it.
Yeah.
The duck thing, I don't get that. Guys that love duck, I've never had a duck that I was like, man, this is great.
I could help you. It's. I don't think it'll ever make my top 3. I've had a few meals that I'm like, man, this is really good, but I've had enough where I've overcooked it or somebody cooked it for me, and it's just like, it's there's a borderline.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah, if you go beyond the edge. Now in a gumbo, it's easy because it's just gonna
Get
stew.
the roux and
And that gumbo, that recipe, I'll share it with you, man. It's so good.
And then, but I've had it grilled, and my buddy Jeremy grilled it one time with coffee grounds and the rub. And it was extremely rare, but man, that was one of the better,
Yeah, and a
grilled
lot of
meats I've
people
ever
do
had.
like the jalapeno with the cream cheese and wrap it
yeah.
in
Same
bacon
as
and all
Dove
that.
or-
And
yeah.
and that's good too. But
Yeah.
yeah, so Matt, what you got?
So for my number one, I'm going to have to say is Nilgai. And Nilgai is a kind of an Indian antelope type of deal. You know, when people think of antelope, they think of the speed goats that we've got here in the
Speed goats,
Range maggots. Same thing.
range maggots.
so
Well, that's like somebody. I went pheasant hunt with somebody when I moved up here, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna go get some ditch chickens." And I'm like, "What? I thought we were going pheasant hunting." He's like, "Ah, it's the name for
Ditch
them."
chickens.
So,
They like to hide out in the
yeah.
ditch.
So,
but you're
but the speed goat is a
speed goat.
pronghorn antelope.
okay.
But you know,
A Nilgai's like a lot bigger, right?
so it's
Yeah.
a species of antelope, but they're, you know, a good bull, you know, be up there in that 700 pound range.
Oh wow. Okay.
And the meat on this thing, the very first one I shot, when I got it home, I flew home with it on the cooler, and when I opened that cooler up and that meat smell just hit me. I mean, it was like I wanted to eat it raw, and I was like, this smells phenomenal.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you know, well, because normally you have that, you know, when you like elk or deer, you know, when you're gutting them, they've kind of got a smell to them.
Yeah.
But this
Not a smell that's like I want to eat this raw.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this, when I opened up that cooler, it just had this sweet, really nice aromatic smell. And come to find out, I mean, it's got what? I mean, it's the same
More
omega-3s
and a piece of
salmon.
ounce per ounce than a piece of salmon.
Wow.
The caloric quality of chicken breast.
And the
it's
same
leaner than a buffalo.
Yeah,
or leaner
it's
than an elk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Wow.
meat is just, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. And actually, the processor out in Granola over at Family Tree Meats, I took Nilgai out there to have it processed because they do such a beautiful job. And he'd never heard of it, got done doing it. He asked me if he could have a couple of packages of hamburger whenever we got done, just because he said it was absolutely the most beautiful meat he had ever seen.
Wow.
And this guy's been doing it all of his life,
Yeah.
ready to retire. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Wow.
it's good.
Fortunately, they're not. They're
Yeah.
fortunately they're not retiring. They're keeping the business, and the family is starting to move in and take over for them.
So where do you hunt these?
So basically, kind of the way the story I heard was that they were part of a circus back in the 1800s, and that circus went under, and they had like 6 breeding pair of these Nilgai, and so they're extinct in their native land. And when the circus went under, they just kind of released them on this ranch, and they bred and just kind of took over. And so now they're all over southern Texas. I mean, there's no you have almost as good a chance of running into one of those in South Texas as you do a deer. I mean, because they're just running wild down there. So you don't want to run into one of those at night.
I thought it was like the King Ranch. Was it not the King Ranch that had 6 breeding pair?
It might have been the King Ranch.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
But all that around Harlingen and Westlaco.
And that's and it's right next to the Upper Uteria is where I shot my first one, was right next door to King Ranch. But same thing, because I was living in California at the time, and there was really no butchers there that I could use to do that. And so I just went to this little Mexican market, and the butcher in the back, same thing. I mean, he goes, "Yep, I got it," and cut it all up. And he said the same thing. He goes, "Man, this is really, really good meat." And I took it to one cookout, and it was the favorite of that cookout that I brought that to. And I just did little, almost like filet roll-ups type of thing with the cream cheese and the jalapeno.
Yeah.
Don't need it. I mean, it is so good. So good.
Yeah.
So that's my number one.
We need to look at like they have that omega-3 fish oil. You know, we need to do an omega-3 Nilgai oil.
Nilgai oil.
There you
So
go.
there may be a market for that.
Start pressing them.
Yeah.
My wife's not a big wild game. She's gotten better in the last few years, but she was ticked off at Matt. Probably still is.
Probably
for
still.
him. Like, she'll ask, "What is this?" Nothing. And he's like, "It's USDA." Blah blah blah. She ended up beating it. Found out it was Nilgai, and it was just ticked off that he slipped it to her. But that was one of the first times we ever ate over your house.
Technically, I wasn't lying, because that was the second one that I had shot, and that was on a ranch, and that was a trophy. That was a trophy bull. And so the USDA actually has to certify that meat, and so it was USDA certified. It just wasn't. It wasn't beef. That's my number one. And funny thing is for my family, they like that, but their favorite so far has been oryx. Oryx is probably one of my family's favorite.
And that's a type of mountain goat?
No, oryx is a scimitar horned oryx. I would
it
say
looks
it's an
like an
antelope.
antelope, but it's probably in the. I haven't shot one. I want to shoot one of those out.
Yeah, a buddy of mine used to have some of those on his ranch. He had a high fence and had a bunch of exotics.
So the funny thing about those is that's what they think that the unicorn came from, is because some of those have broken off, and so they've got that one
Big
giant.
Oh yeah,
Yep, that comes off. So
it wasn't the rainbow poop everywhere.
no,
No,
I don't
Okay.
think that they poop rainbows.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Number 2 is going to be axis. So axis deer, I've had the chance to have quite a bit of that, and it's kind of along the same lines. Very good smelling meat. The rarer you cook it, the better it is. And it's just super tender, really, really good meat, and they're beautiful, beautiful animal. And then I'm going to go with number 3. I had salmon written down, wild caught salmon, but I'm going to change it up because you guys got me going on that Cajun feel with your.
You actually had stuff written down. You prepared.
I did, well, yeah. If you
This
look
is
at my
the
notes
fourth
here,
animal he's given us.
Yeah.
so you had 4 with your
That's right.
2A and 2B.
Yep.
He's our guest, though. He can do whatever he wants.
Hey, if he's doing it, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm switching up, and I'm going to go with it because I
And
know
then he's going to give a trophy. Yeah, I had the most in the top 3.
because I know it's going to annoy
Most favorite game
2 of you
animals.
at the table.
Okay.
Crawdads.
Oh, shut up. Crawfish.
So-
you don't say crazy.
I like crawdads.
It's crawfish.
So
Punks.
I've never seen one.
I can't even comment on
Yeah.
that.
so for these Louisiana boys, your crawfish
Yeah.
is probably one of my. It would be in my top 3. Doing those crawfish boils and peeling
Yep.
those tails and getting that Cajun spice.
Yep.
And then mixing it in with the potatoes and the corn on the cob
Yeah.
type of deal, and that's one of my favorite.
I wouldn't necessarily call them wild game.
They're farmed.
Coming from Louisiana,
Yeah.
they're farmed. You can get them at any Chinese buffet across the U.S.
Yeah.
So then I'll stick with my wild salmon. How's
There you
that?
go.
Yeah, stick with your wild salmon. Now, I will tell you, I was not a salmon fan until I took a trip to Alaska and got to eat some fresh salmon. And
It's
I'm like,
way
oh, man,
different.
this
Way
is-
different.
Yeah, it's a lot different than what I
They do have wild caught salmon in a frozen bag that you can buy at Kroger, though. So I don't-
That's not what he's talking about.
right.
We've got a fish market by the house that actually flies it in 3 times a week. That used to be right here by the office.
Oh,
and
that's
moved out.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah,
we ran
I'm
out.
a
We
fan.
didn't get to go salmon fishing last year because of this COVID.
I did.
Yeah, he did. You
But
had to
we
take a
didn't- we didn't-
test.
Oh yeah, I had to do the whole COVID test and
You
quarantine.
didn't bring? Did you bring some home?
We didn't get to bring any home.
Yeah, that's what.
Do fish carry COVID?
No,
No.
I don't know. Why didn't you bring any home?
They haven't tested the fish yet.
not enough room in the prison wallet.
Well, I think that the week that we were there, the good salmon, because the ones you want are the sockeyes. They're the best ones to eat.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't running at the time, and so there just wasn't enough to spread between everybody
Yeah.
to bring back. But when we're up there, I mean, this time I caught so many trout, which I never have caught that many trout up there. But I got into this new game called mousing with a fly rod, and it's a little fly that
looks like a mouse.
that kind of looks like a mouse, and you just kind of wiggle it around and pap. So I got Dolly Varden trout, and then rainbows, and then we cooked those up on the shore. And
Now,
had shore
and
lunch.
you mentioned trout is 2B or whatever, whichever one of yours.
2A.
But there's something about, and I think it's happened with me more with trout than any other wild game, like catching and cooking right next to the stream or wherever you get it.
Yeah.
There's something about that with trout that's just fantastic.
And for me, growing up, my dad, that's what we did in the summers was go fishing,
Yeah.
all over the place. We'd spend 2 weeks in Wisconsin. We'd spend a couple weeks in Colorado. And trout always, they just live in beautiful places,
Yeah.
And it's those small creeks. It's more of a, and I'm not a big fan of going and fishing the San Juan where you're elbow to elbow or over in Missouri, but you can get in some of those remote places where it's more of a spiritual, it's the same as hunting, for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, cool.
So that concludes my top 3, but I still maintain that crawdads are
Crawfish
on my top 3.
Yeah, just go down to Louisiana and, I don't know, somewhere around Bro Bridge and say, hey, where the crawdads at? Where can I get some crawdads? Just do that for me.
So I will be the weird one.
Yeah. Yeah. You may not come back,
Maybe. They might have some grace.
Yeah. Who's got the good word for us today?
Man, I got the good word today.
Okay.
And it kind of fits with what we were talking about earlier. A quote I heard recently is freedom is on the other side of discipline. And I think you can say victory is on the other side of discipline as well. Whether you're talking about reaching a goal or something, you always have to set things in place to actually reach those goals. Whether it be walking on prosthetics or something financial or whatever it may be, a business goal that you're trying to get to, just being disciplined enough.
Walking up a mountain.
There you go. That is hard, and you must train. Unlike we did not train, you must train.
We could throw that picture up there again because that's still one of my favorite pictures. Is you passed out on a rock.
That's good. It was fun. If I ever do that again, I will be training, disciplining myself so I can have some victory at the top of that mountain. And then I got a quote from Kobe Bryant. It says, I have nothing in common.
A quote.
A coat.
I was going to say, you said coat.
Fits
quote.
Like fits like
okay.
Fits like a cape.
Why did Kobe give you a coat? Yeah. Like, I don't know.
I don't have a coat, but a quote.
Okay.
Quote, I have nothing in common with lazy people who blame others for their lack of success. Great things come from hard work and perseverance. No excuses. Dedication sees dreams come true.
Yeah. And I think he exemplified
Absolutely.
hard work ethic.
Sure.
A lot of people
He did.
talked about how talented he was, but
Yeah.
he was in the gym a lot more than most anybody else on his team.
Yeah.
Seems to be a theme with some of those, most of those top players.
Those lucky players that were just gifted with talent.
They've got all that natural ability.
Yeah.
No work whatsoever.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like that. I always think about Jordan in that documentary. I took that personally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He worked his tail off. That's my dad's favorite quote. That's my favorite quote from my dad was always, he'd say, well, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
And, as you get older and you realize you just got to outwork everybody, not just the people right around you, but, those people that, oh, he's so lucky, he's got this or that, or,
They typically say that when they're sitting on their couch.
Yeah. Somebody worked their butt off to get wherever they are. And that's what you strive for.
Well, and I think that still resonates too with your ability in prosthetics. I mean, you're just going to outwork everybody else out there when another prosthetist would have just given up and said, oh, that's good enough.
Just hard-headed.
It's never hard-headed.
That's right.
But that's practical and realistic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, you going to take us on out?
I am. I will.
Are you ready to take us out?
I'm waiting for music.
What are you doing over there?
He's over there. Trophy for playing some music
texting
around here. All right. Thank you for joining the Hardheaded podcast, brought to you by Admiral's Pennant Beard Oil. Go check them out, admiralspennant.com. I'd like to thank Steve Peeples for being here with us today. Appreciate you and all that you do. Why don't you check out peoplesop.com to see some more things that Steve's done with some videos that Troy's put together. Make a really good impact. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.